Hi everyone, Sean Jansbar here. I work for a company called Mobify based out of Vancouver, Canada. This is the video tutorial that accompanies the Netmag article Blending the Best of Web and Native with Astro. And what I'm going to be doing is taking you through a tutorial for building Astro apps. Astro apps are really we call progressive apps. Progressive apps are applications that take advantage of web within your iOS and Android applications, but progressively enhance them to take advantage of native features and functionality where it makes sense. So, for example, leveraging um, native header bars, native transitions, in order for the app to feel a lot more like a native app that's much more familiar to the user. And it also allows you to take complete control over certain features if you want more advanced performance for certain features, but still allows you to leverage the web because there's tons of content from the web that is going to feel still just as great in a native app. So really what Astro is about is allowing you to kind of intermix native and web views, um, essentially blending the best of native and web. So I'm going to run through this tutorial that we actually have live on astro.mofo.com, the developer documentation. Um, the first step would really just be to clone the tutorial, run a bunch of npm installs to get the dependencies. I've done all that. We're also going to run this demo site that we call Velo. So we're going to be taking Velo and building a application for it using Astro. So I'll show you that. So have it running already. So if we just go to localhost 5000 and refresh, you'll see that this is just a basic page with a couple add to cart buttons, and that's it. And then the next step is to open up the app in Xcode. So you just run this command here. I already have that conveniently open. So if you were to look in Xcode, you can see this is what it looks like. You're actually just in Xcode. You're not abstracting anything away from the user. So if you do want to build native features and functionality, there's no layer on top. There's no special language. It's just you're writing in Swift, or you would be writing in Android, Android Studio. But a majority of the application is typically going to be web content, and also we use something we call app.js to be able to control the how the different web and native views interact and layout on the screen. So that's where we're going to jump into next. We're actually going to open app.js. So I'm just going to use my favorite editor, Atom. So this is app.js. The next step actually just asks you to insert your IP address so it knows where to load the Velo site. I've already done that. So when you go to Xcode and run this, this is what you're going to see. Inside of the simulator, you're basically just going to see a web view that's loading Velo. Very basic, no native functionality really other than loading a website into a web view. If you're familiar with Cordova or PhoneGap, this isn't too different from that. You just have a website running in a web view. What we're going to do now is add a few native views to this. You also notice that this page doesn't have a header bar. The reason for that is because it was stripped for the purposes of this, because we don't want to use the web header bar. We want to build a native one so that it feels much more familiar to the user. So if we were to go to step 3, add the header bar, what it's going to ask us to do is it's going to ask us to require in the header bar plugin. The header bar plugin is just a JavaScript representation of that plugin with a number of methods, and those methods are methods that would get executed on the native side to be able to do any instantiation of that view or call any methods on it, such as adding buttons or things like that. So let's just run with that. So I'm just going to add it here at the bottom. So we've added this to the top of the file. So we're going to bring in that header bar plugin dependency. And then what we're going to want to do is initialize that plugin. So I'm just going to scroll down to initialize plugin section here. What we're actually going to do is create a promise. And if you're not familiar with promises, basically we're using this to avoid callback spaghetti. So everything in Astro is asynchronous, just due to the fact that everything we're instantiating has to send a message to the native side and receive a message back. So we make heavy use of promises within the Astro framework. So the next step here is to actually, once we've resolved that promise and the header bar has been instantiated, we want to set the background color and the text color. And then we want to actually add that header bar to the top of our layout. So Astro also comes with a plugin for layout. We call it the anchored layout, or sorry, the anchored layout plugin. And that anchored layout plugin allows you to add views to the top and the bottom and into the middle. So what we're going to be doing is adding a top view, which is going to be our native header bar. So let's just add this code snippet. And so let's give that a run. We have our app rebuilding. You'll notice that we have a header bar here with no content, and as we got on to the next steps, we'll see a bit more added into there. So the next step is we're going to want to actually set some icons on our actual header plugin instance. So if you were to look at this code, what it does is rather than simply just waiting for our navigation plugin to instantiate and navigate to a separate URL, we're actually going to wait for both the navigation and the header to finish, and then we're going to call a couple of methods. And just to be clear, the main navigation promise is an object that gets exposed to app.js that allows you to do a stack of navigational views. So what we're going to be doing here is setting the header bar on that navigation view, and then we're going to navigate to that URL and set a bunch of header icons. And then at the bottom here, you'll notice header bar.on click back. We're just wiring it up such that when you click on the back button of the header bar, it causes the navigation stack to go back. And because we're dealing with web views here, it's actually going to stack a number of web views as we click on to different areas. So I'm going to copy this code, and it also says to delete this line of code. So let's make sure to do that when we get into our editor here. So this is this, and it wants us to replace it with this. So let's give that a try. Great. So you'll notice here that we actually have some icons here set at the top. These are actually fully native views here, not created with web. And so if you were to click on one of these links, it's going to navigate to a product display page. And if you were to click here, if you were just to go back, you'll notice that there's actually a stack here. As you're going back, it'll just navigate back to the previous page. So our next step here is going to be to add a flyout drawer to our application. So first steps, we're going to want to add what we call drawer plugin to our application. So for us to go to the top, we're going to want to require that in as well. And now now that we have the drawer plugin, let's instantiate it as well. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually set our layout. So I mentioned before we have an anchored layout plugin that allows you to create views and anchor them to the top or the bottom or the center. We're actually going to want to set the drawer, or sorry, we're going to want to set the layout in the drawer. That way, you know, the layout can kind of slide to the left or slide to the right if you have drawers coming from the left or coming from the right. So we are just going to copy this snippet to our code. And we're going to want to delete the code that sets the layout as kind of the main content view. And instead, we're going to want the drawer to be the main content view. So you'll notice here we have this application.set main view plugin method. And that's kind of the thing that says, hey, give me the root view that you want to render for your app. We're just going to delete that because we no longer want that to be our layout plugin. And instead, we're going to replace it with this. So I'm going to undo and so at this point we have our drawer, but we don't actually have any content in that drawer. So at this point, what we want to do is actually instantiate another web view. And what we're going to be creating here is a web view that's going to load the cart page. And that way we can kind of keep the cart in the side and allow it to always be persistent. So let's instantiate a new web view. And let's add this code, which will navigate to the cart page and set the background color. And that will only happen once that cart web view promise resolves. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set that drawer up and pass in the cart web view into the init right menu method. Now, what we're also going to want to do is hook up the show and hide drawer buttons. So I'm just going to copy this snippet, which is going to wait for the drawer promise to complete, the header promise to complete, and once we have those, what we're going to do is we're going to add a event listener that says on click of the cart, toggle the right trigger. That should get us up and running with a drawer, so let's just rebuild that. All right, so now you should actually be able to see a drawer on the right. There's nothing in our cart right now, but we have this drawer that is opening from the side. that we can either drag open and drag closed, or just click that and have it open. And just to be kind of clear again, that is a fully native drawer. So as that slides over, that's just native content sliding over, and it's sliding over the web view that's contained within our anchored layout. And as you open this, this is also web view contained in that side drawer, but the animation opening and closing it, that's all native. So it would be great to actually have something in that cart. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire up some events such that the add to cart method will work. So let's add some add to cart interactions. One really key feature of Astro that's really important to understand is the concept of making websites app aware. So if you're familiar with the concept of progressive enhancement, this won't be unfamiliar to you. The concept of progressive enhancement is as browsers get better and better, you can progressively enhance your site to take advantage of those features. And so one new concept we've introduced with progressive apps is when your website is running within a progressive app, it should know this, and it should change its behavior to accommodate for that. So for instance, hiding a header bar using CSS if you're running inside of an app, or in this case, what we're going to be doing is overriding the add to cart button so that we can do something different when it's running inside of the app. So in order to do that, we're actually going to add this library called the Astro client. The Astro client is the library that we're going to throw in the web view so that we can facilitate communication between the web view and app.js. So let's just do that. So we're going to want to add this script into our scripts partial, which I have handily open here. So let's just add that there, save. And so now this object called Astro is going to be available on window. And Astro has a number of events, and the events that we're specifically interested in here are going to be the astro.trigger method, which is going to allow us to trigger an event from the web view into app.js so that we can do some native behavior based on that. What we're going to be doing is when we receive that event, we're going to want to open the drawer and send a trigger with cart updated. So let's just copy and paste the snippet for overriding the add to cart button. We're going to add it to cart add, which I conveniently have open. And then what we're going to want to do is add this code that is going to listen for that add to cart clicked event on the navigation view, because that's where the event is going to be coming from. As I mentioned before, our navigation view is simply a stack of web views that we navigated to that was set up earlier in app.js when we cloned the tutorial. So I'm just going to copy and paste the snippet. Going back to app.js. Not the right indentation there. And so once we receive that event, it's going to open the right drawer, and then it's going to let the cart view know that something has been added. And so that's going to trigger a cart updated event on the web view. And that's already going to be listening for the cart updated event. So let's just save that. Let's rebuild. So let's click Add to Cart. Great. Now you'll notice that the native drawer opened up, and it also, because it sent that trigger message to the cart web view, it added that specific item to the cart. And that's it. So what you've gone from is a simple website to a website that's actually stacking views to make sure that the app feels like a native app when you go back. It does the same typical animations that you'd see in a normal um, iOS app, and you also have a uh, native drawer so that the animations there are feeling much more native, but there's plenty of content to still reuse from the website. Um, so yeah, that's Astro. Blends the best of native and web views, and looking forward to having you give it a try and giving us lots of great feedback. And make sure you head to astro.mobify.com and join our Slack community to give us any further feedback. Thanks so much.